Hello, all of you, or you guests, however many of you there are. We're just going to wait a few more minutes in case some more people log on. So it'll, in the meantime, we are recording. Cheryl. Okay.
Cheryl. I use Zoom a lot. I often forget where the controls are, but I'll let you handle that. Almost always in Teams.
This. Celia?
Hi, Cecilia.
Hi, Fred. I feel like I've spent the day, well, half the day with you, and
Yeah. That was quite a meeting, wasn't it?
yeah, it was.
Hello, Cheryl. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Was having a little difficulty here. How's everybody doing?
All right. Looks like you're in the car.
Yes, I am. A long day, a lot of programs.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
But you're not driving, are you?
No, I'm not. No. Now I'm in Texas. They have enough bad drivers. Without me. No.
I don't know. We could, I'm in DC and well, in Alexandria outside DC, and we probably have almost as many.
Well, they say that New York is in Jersey. I'm from Jersey. They
Yeah,
say that we drive bad. I said, but we know it. I said, you will cut somebody off here in Texas and give them the finger like they did something wrong.
yeah.
When we cut you off in New Jersey and New York, we know we're cutting you off. We want to cut you off. But here they're like, you fool, you should have known I want to cut you off. So it's a different animal driving here. They think they're on horses.
Okay. Well, Claire,
Yeah.
Hi, Claire.
how are you?
Hi, guys.
Recovered?
What'd you say?
I said, have you recovered?
I
It
think
actually went pretty well, I thought.
it did. We put a lot of planning into it to make sure everybody
Yeah,
felt like they were heard and they had a voice. I think it worked.
good.
I think it worked.
Yeah, it really helped to get a complete explication of the budget. It really did.
I think 2 public comment sessions also helped.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to take credit for that.
Eric.
That was, I
Eric,
don't think that's ever happened in a board meeting.
You're kind of a glutton for punishment doing that, but yes.
No, it just means I'm listening. I am listening to what people want. I am. It's a culture shift. We have a lot of culture in SPJ, tradition, culture, protocol. So sometimes change is a little slower than we like.
well, we've got 4 committee members here and 2 of our expert panel. So far, we don't have very many outsiders yet. Maybe we should wait just a little while and see what happens.
Hi, Cheryl.
Well, my ethics
Hi,
panel
Claire.
attracted about 40 people, so I was really pleased with that.
Oh, good. That
Yeah.
meant you probably outnumbered everybody else for the rest of the entire week. If you had 40 people.
I think, people, our panelists were good at promoting, and I sort of did a lot of promoting. So, yeah, I was glad, it would say 37, 40, and it would be around that the whole time. So we
Oh,
had
good.
people ask questions. It was good.
It was a little disappointing we didn't have more nationally, but I think locally you're liable to get more because they are, closer to the hosts and the subject, and are more likely to be exposed to the publicity about it.
Andy.
Andy,
Hello, sorry to be late.
Andy?
that's all right. As you can see, there's not a whole heck of a lot of people
Yes.
here.
There's not a huge queue to join.
I
Maybe
was
they're all at the-
hoping-
Oh, no, we answered all the questions, Andy, already.
It solves every problem.
Maybe they're all at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes.
I was hoping that that the dean of my school would join us, because so he could see what I learned from having to take his course twice.
Oh,
Where are you going,
Just kidding.
Cheryl? Cheryl, where are you going?
You say what?
Where are you going?
Where am I going?
Uh-huh.
Oh. I'm going home now, but my professor was Robert Ruggles, who was dean of Florida A&M's school, and if you were 0.5 away from a B, you got a C. And,
Oh, wow. No, I'm too
So,
nice, Mark. Yeah.
yeah. So I took ethics twice,
Oh, did you?
Oh.
and
then
that
you
was
must
one
be
of my
twice as
favorite
ethical.
courses.
You liked it that much. It's not that you failed the first one.
Oh yeah, and he thinks I'm wonderful now, but I bet he thought I was an idiot back then, or I just didn't care. And but it's like I love to teach ethics now, but back then, he only taught 2 classes, and everyone was afraid to take those 2 classes, and that was communications law and ethics, journalism ethics. And you couldn't graduate if you didn't pass them.
I think journalism law is the toughest course in journalism school.
Well, can you imagine in Hong Kong?
Hmm?
I
Sharon,
remember one law case.
Sharon Fast, who teaches law at Hong Kong University. She's Canadian. She's leaving next year. She just can't handle it. It's just too much with the national
Yes.
security law and everything. It's just pressure, it's really difficult. And you get reported by the students back,
Ooh.
there's going to be
Hmm.
people like that. You don't know who's listening. And so anyway, but it's tough, but worth it. We have to know the law. So it's good. So you teach
That's-
ethics, Gerald, do you?
Oh, who are you asking, Eric?
I was asking Cheryl. She teaches ethics now.
Oh, now I taught at Paul Quinn College. That's the one class I like to teach. I think I like inflicting the pain that was inflicted upon me. I think maybe that's what it was. But I
Pass
just,
it on, right.
but there's a different student today than it was 10 years ago. And with COVID, I just don't know. We just have a different student that walks in the classroom. So now I just teach communications. I just go in it so I can stay in tune with what they're thinking, because I don't know what the heck these young people are thinking these days unless I stay engaged. So I like being in a classroom and trying to get them see just what they're thinking, because see where they're getting their news from and what they think is news.
Mhm.
Because ethics has gone out of the window when you think about what folks are listening to and taking as fact.
Yeah, that's unfortunately true. The one thing that I was really perhaps most happy about is that listening to Eric's group, a panel discussion of AI, I was encouraged that it's not the real threat that I thought it was going to be. It's does have some useful purposes. And in fact, very useful purposes, I would say.
Hey, Chris.
This is the
Hi,
Hi,
Chris.
morning. I mean, afternoon. I mean, I mean, there's a panel I saw in, I think it's in Rio, and the headline is, the title is, "Will AI kill journalism?" I mean, of course not.
No,
You know, I think they call that pessimism bias, you know. I mean, of course not.
well, I
And
think,
as I think we said in the in my panel was it's not going to cover the front line in Mariupol, you know.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's a certain way aspect of journalism that's going to be probably made easier, you know, and fake stuff might become easier too. But I mean, you know, television didn't replace the cinema ultimately, you know.
No, that's true. In fact, everybody's saying that each new technology is going to replace the previous one, and it doesn't. I think, although I must say that the internet has come closer to wrecking journalism than any of the other previous technologies that originally were going to replace it.
Yeah.
Radio or television or
And
whatever.
it was interesting that Joe Amditis, I mean, both the panelists, Joe and Amy, were terrific, you know, said for him the biggest threat was the voice.
Oh, yes.
And did you see the case? I think it was in the US or Canada yesterday. There was a fake kidnapping.
Yes.
where-
And use the
Yeah.
child's actual voice
Yeah.
or a reproduction thereof.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know if it was a fake kidnapping, but the voice it was a fake phone call.
Yeah.
Kidnapped. You know.
Well, that's another reason I never succumb to calls about my grandchild being in trouble, because we missed the middle step.
Yeah,
We don't have any kids.
Good.
interesting.
I could
Oh.
take advantage of this esteemed panel to share a situation that I found myself in trying to balance competing interests. And I called upon the Code of Ethics to try to explain the decision. It was a case of reporting on a father, I'll start at the top, a man abusing a boy, physically abusing a boy. And the key thing for us was that he was a sheriff's deputy. And the police department put out a press release saying the deputy has been suspended. He abused a 5-year-old boy, but gave no other details. So we went to the charging documents and found that it was his son. And the type of abuse that he was accused of was the boy was said to be bullying kids in school, and the father tried to discipline him by making him do physical activities. He was making him run, he was making him do push-ups, and it wasn't working. So he started resorting to corporal punishment, beating him with a belt and kind of other similar things. So our policy is that we generally don't report on who victims are, but in this case we did, and we reported more detail, including the relationship, the age, and the type of abuse, because we thought that it could have been harmful to also not report that. If you had a sheriff's deputy who abused a child and there was no context, the community could consider that he is out randomly abusing children that he runs into. So we caught some serious flack over that from people in the social services and victim advocacy community that said what we did was very damaging because the boy now is going to live with this and it will be permanent online. So they lobbied us to change our approach, particularly at the sentencing. So I called upon the code of truth versus harm, and usually truth will win out, but in cases of abuse, harm often rises up and may be more important. But in this case, we thought there was also an additional harm by sparse in the truth. So I lay that out there for anybody that wants to consider what they would do.
But there's nothing legal that you can't publish anything that would identify the child, including the name of the parent. There's no legal restriction in that.
No.
How old was the child, Andy?
Well, so there's a there's also a bit of an addendum in that there were two children. He was accused of abusing his son, who was 6. And then we later found by happenstance that the wife was accused of abusing the younger child, who was 3. And we never would have reported on that case. But now there's an additional element of balance involved. If a father's accused of abusing one boy, why not report on the mother abusing the other boy? She kind of gets roped into it. So
And how was the accusation made? I mean, how did you hear about this?
the police department actually, well, I should say that the state police put out one sentence saying that this happened. For details, call the sheriff's office, which is where he was employed. And then a day later, the sheriff's office put out a press release saying that he was charged and suspended, but gave no details other than it was a boy.
And it's very interesting, Andy, because you would assume it was sexual abuse, which it wasn't. So it's a strange case. Did any other media cover it?
Yes, and that was part of what the advocates, I mean, I shouldn't say that they were very strong in their pushback. They were just concerned and wanted a meeting, which I gave them. But that was one of the things they brought up is, why did you report this relationship? Everybody else who reported on it did not. Well, I'm pretty sure that everybody else who reported on it did not go and get the charging documents. They based it on a press release that did not state that. I don't know that there was any decision-making involved. That's what they had access to.
Doesn't sound like a very nice family environment.
No, the mother doesn't. Must have, yeah. Seems all a bit.
Well, I mean, my husband is like an international expert on this in this area. But what newspaper did it get published in, Andy? I forget which newspaper you're with.
I would work for the Frederick News Post in Frederick, Maryland.
Okay, I will have him look at that, what you've covered.
Sure, I can send it to you.
And I don't know about, it sounds like the accusation against the father was pretty solid, but maybe how did the accusation against the mother get communicated?
I believe that the mother had some type of similar allegation of abuse against the younger child. I have to go back and see it, but the father's abuse was more distinctive in my mind because he told
Yeah,
the investigator, like, you know, sometimes you just have to do this. Your kids aren't, misbehaving, but it may have, I accidentally hit him too hard in this particular area or something like that.
Yeah, I'll have my husband look at that and he might be writing to you, who knows?
Sure.
That's it, Andy, isn't it?
There it is.
Oh my gosh, look at that. Power of the
It comes all the way to Hong Kong. This is quite impressive. You got a big circulation.
There it is. That's right. Well, when our web traffic shows some readership in Hong Kong, we'll go on.
Well, that's
So he was named.
So interesting. Okay.
So, I'll just kind of furthering the thread, and this gets beyond this particular incident, but we also had to do something very similar a few months ago, in which the chief of staff for the county executive, arguably the second person with most power in the county, being her right-hand person, also faced allegations of child abuse. And her response was that it was because she was caught in a dispute between her husband and his ex-wife, who is the one who initiated the allegations because her child said he had a mark on him. She reported it, and it led to more allegations that were perhaps questionable, not to minimize child abuse, but a child dragging a blanket and she grabs it and the child falls and hits his head. perhaps not intentional. But in that case, we also use the balance of truth to outweigh a little bit more the harm, because we saw no way to get past it. A woman is accused of abusing 3 children, and her response is, "It's my stepkids, and here's why." And, to us left no choice. But the victim advocates, for whatever reason, didn't pick on us in that case.
They may have been steered in the same direction of that consideration, stepkid. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
I think I'd have done based on what you were saying. I lost a little bit of the audio in the first part of your explanation, Andy, but seeing that, I think I'd have taken the same approach on that balance with, hey, quasi-public figure, police officer, and in the case of the public official, that's got to be disclosed. And I don't want to sound pamby-pamby, but those relationships can be figured out and people will know anyway. I mean, charges are filed, police action, court connections, it's begun. The public needs to know that.
it's amazing how many ethics dilemmas come down to a balance between those two bits of those two major principles, telling the truth and minimizing harm. It's, I would say, 80% of the ethics cases deal with those two things.
And the one thing that I don't think we really did adequately and haven't in a while, because partly I don't always have the time to do this, but it's to address that ethical concern in real time.
Yeah.
I have no interest in just defensively waiting and hoping the phone doesn't ring, and that's when I'll start explaining myself. I really do like the idea of explaining it, and my publisher will sometimes prod me more, say it could just be a few paragraphs, here's why we did it, and that's true. But I think explaining yourself goes a long way. For various situations that we've had, people just don't understand that you have actually given this thought.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? You're not understanding. And the only way, as I tell my staff over and over, the only way you can explain what you've done, what you haven't done, is by publishing. So if you don't, that gap.
Yeah.
We
think
had
for
an incident in with the Dallas Morning News where they were publishing a story about a pastor, and when you start messing with the clergy, you have issues, and they did a great job of explaining and talking about their process and every step of the way, because they expected a lot of heat from this very popular mega church here in Dallas. And there were several allegations. And in this case, there were victims. There were physical, sexual abuse in a number of cases. And the Dallas Morning News did an excellent job of just taking you through all the precautions. In fact, I kind of felt they went overboard in explaining in their work, because they were so intent upon trying to minimize the damage that they expected to hear from the community.
Who's the cutie asleep in the back seat?
That she's my abuser, because we at one place and she was tearing the place up, and now she's asleep. That's Skylar.
She's cute.
As soon as we finish this call and I go to lay down, she's gonna wake up.
Yes, she will. You're right.
Fred, somebody in the Q&A or the chat wrote that the chat is disabled.
Oh, it is. Oh.
I don't know, because it's in webinar format. That could be why. I don't know, but
It says chat in the quick Q&A. It says chat is disabled.
yeah,
But chat doesn't seem to be disabled, is it?
yes.
I can see it, but I'm not getting.
Only for panelists, it's not disabled, but for
regular people.
yeah, I think that's why we're not getting any questions. I think that's why.
It's really a challenge trying to serve, because people are they're either sensitive or litigious, and you run into those, you're going to find yourself with a lawsuit, or they're super sensitive, and there's so many people out there who are putting information out, and folks don't know what is legitimate, what is source, what is news, what is gossip. They really have no clue. Because anybody who can pick up a microphone, anyone who can pick up a cell phone, they can just start putting stuff out there, and folks take it as fact if they see it or read it.
You know, the discussion I led on Wednesday had Lynn Walsh and Beth Potter and Sally Lerman, all of whom are very, very active in the what I call trust projects, which is trying to help the public understand what it is that journalists do and how to tell real journalism from people just sitting around in their fuzzy slippers and mouthing off. And the three of them, after the meeting, I've noticed have been including me in their messages, and they're all sort of energized to work together on their projects. And there are about a half dozen of these out there. And if they can collaborate somehow, maybe something will get done other than just a lot of wheel spinning, which it's a very difficult problem to tackle. And I hope those three can expand their efforts to include more of those projects.
Touching on
So-
that, I'd like to throw something out there, if I may. As soon as we were finished talking about that, I thought of Wednesday's sessions. I gave a good deal of thought to the explanatory panel. Why did we do this? How do we do it? The New York Times, well, many publications and outlets do it. Looking at those figures of public perception of the trustworthiness of journalists, they're pretty low. And
Yeah,
when I'm considering which mechanisms would we use and how often to explain things, let me throw this out there. If more outlets, more sites, whatever, more journalists, more editors started doing that, would the public wonder why? And perhaps could that have an erosion further on trust? Well, why do they keep explaining this? Anybody have any comments? Because that's on my mind occasionally.
you worry that too much explanation might create suspicion?
Yeah, we doth protest too much. Yeah, comes across.
Yeah.
All this time, and then all of a sudden, whoa, now they're suddenly being serious. And then why are they saying this all the time? I don't know that would be the result. I'm just saying, anybody have any thoughts on that? How far should we go? How should it be done? Maybe just in major instances, measuring audience outrage, reaction, positivity, whatever.
I would say that it's hard to over explain what you do. And I'll give an example. Just, we had a conversation while editing a story, my newsroom yesterday. How often do you have to explain a thing that you cite, what it really is? Do we have to explain Facebook, a site where people go to post messages? And so we started thinking about the different social media. I don't think you have to explain Facebook. I don't think you have to explain Twitter. We kind of stopped at Instagram. I'll say probably not. Do we need to explain Snapchat? I'd say we probably still do. And you can do that in a way that is brief and not really talking down to your audience. Snapchat, if it's relevant, Snapchat, a site where messages are shared and then disappear quickly. I don't think you can ever go wrong in explaining how you did things and why you did things in that way, because we tend to assume that people already know. And I don't think there will ever be a time when people universally already know everything that you do. Just as simple as a letter from an editorial from a story. You always have to label them, you have to distinguish them. And we should be thinking about, when we take actions or publish, how can this be interpreted? Will people understand? There's no harm in explaining as you go.
Good points. I say the same things to my student journals, particularly about social media platforms. Yeah.
But you
What do
know,
you do
you
with
can
some?
explain and you can explain and you can explain. Some people are not going to care. They're
Yeah.
not going to ever get it. Doing talk radio, the police put out an alert one time about a 15-year-old and 16-year-old who killed two young men. And so a mother called in on the show and she wanted me to mention the guys' names, but these are minors. And so I didn't go into a big explanation. I just gave the information and I did not say. And this woman harbored, she started an organization and they came down on me and she was upset because I would not say who the police were looking for that killed her son. Now, her son was her child. The 15 and 16-year-old, they're someone else's child. And if I had given their names, their parents may have come down on me about it. And it was the right thing to do for me. I felt not to release their names, and I didn't have a big discussion about it today. I think that now in this day and age, and we've been talking about that, I'm in a collaboration with the Dallas Morning News about how do we reach and localize journalism better for people. And I said, sometimes we have to get out and let them hear from us, to have some community forums from time to time and discuss some of those tough subjects that people don't understand, because we're kind of thinking sometimes that, oh, everyone knows this. And, you know, I was taught write for a fourth grader. Now I'm writing for this 3-year-old back here because, you know, we have, and then we're in a profession that has taken so many hits from people publicly and at high levels. We're trying to gain trust, so they need to see us. We need to have some conversations. We need to have some face-to-face. We need to get from behind our desk, from behind the computers, and put feet to the ground and let them talk to us instead of us telling them what they should think is important, what they should read, and how they should feel about things.
You know, there was a documentary years ago about one of the San Francisco Bay Area early alternative newspapers, and its title just bugs me. And I think it's exactly the wrong attitude, but it's one of those things that a lot of journalists still cling to. And the title of the documentary was "Tell the Story and Run." I don't think we can afford to do that anymore. I think we have to be transparent and we have to own up to our mistakes.
I better fix my email, Fred. My email signature has "Tell the Truth and Run" attributed to George Selden, George Seldes via who was it originally? Haywood Broun. I better fix that.
And I think, you know, Cheryl, also people are accused or charged with something, but they're not, you know, they haven't gone through a trial yet. And the police make a lot of mistakes. And finally, I think we're getting to the point where we have better police reporters, at least in certain places and certain outlets. But my daughter does a lot of work on police reform. Well, she's, you know, she is very very active in that arena. But I think the days of like just running with a press release are long gone. A press release actually from anybody, but I think from police have not really done very well with press releases lately.
Well,
I would say you guys are asking questions that academics are studying and have studied. And I can summarize the research. First of all, transparency and credibility are not the same thing. And research is showing that being more transparent doesn't make you credible. You think about every other institution we cover doesn't have a correction thing to fix mistakes. They act as if they never make mistakes, but we fix these things. News organizations have, for the last decade, some have gone away, have those comment sections underneath, and people are whining about our stories, whereas everybody else who does communication doesn't have that spot underneath for them to complain about the product that is being sold to them. we're seeing credibility rise as some of the comment sections have gone away. And I think also, the research is showing that we used to be on our own platforms. Nobody else had a newspaper but us. Nobody else was broadcast but us. Now we are on the same platforms as all the other crap. So our stuff isn't perceived as special anymore. And between that, and of course, you're talking about working the reps and politicians who see that they can, with impunity, almost lie about what it is we do. And also the reality that we just don't do what we used to do in terms of, my newspaper used to have 35 workers. They've got 2 reporters now. And they're 4 days behind on everything and a whole lot of press releases. I haven't seen a story in my newspaper that has surprised me in years because they don't have anybody who can do anything that's surprising and interesting. And that's a Gannett paper, and I shouldn't be complaining about them because others are the same way. But the cycle is scaring. And also the next generation doesn't read print or really anything.
Yeah. I'm
They're
afraid
reading their
that's
own.
right.
Yeah, they're willing to eat sand for free than to pay for the meal that we offer.
Or Tide Pods.
Yeah, I was walking into a restaurant. Some of you may know Rudy Bush from the morning news. And I walked in carrying newspapers, and the hostesses at the counter, they said, they still print those?
Oh,
And it's not what you want to hear. I mean, but it's like the dumbing of America, the dumbing of the world, that you say, okay, we were at a national newspaper publishers convention in Vegas, and there was a panel, and the young people were like, newsflash, we don't read, which I said, okay, you're proud to say that, but that is where they are. They don't read.
Andy,
result of-
how big is your staff?
My staff,
Yeah,
for the news side, there are 2 editors working with 6 reporters, although we're down 1. We have a small staff for sports, 1
Yeah.
editor for lifestyle, a small copy desk, and 2 photographers.
and how big is your circulation area?
The area, as far as the population,
Yeah,
about 280,000.
yeah. So, and how has it been for you? People read what you put out online or in print, in print? That's good.
Well, I have a little bit of comparison that many people don't have, in that I worked there for 2 years, from 2015 to 17. And at that time, we had 12 reporters, and we now have 6. And
Yeah,
it can constantly cycle through my mind if I let it, but I try not to. I try to look at the resources that we have. What can we do instead of, the old days? Because
yeah, absolutely. Yes,
stuff.
yeah,
But I'm going to share in the comments here, because there's lots of interesting threads here that I have so many opinions about. But I'm going to go back to one thing that you said about the days of press releases are gone. I actually don't think that's true at all. And in the one area where it's probably the most severe is police reporting. I would encourage everybody to look at watch the John
Yes.
Oliver segment on police reporting. It was really good. And it was actually painful for me to watch, because this is the first time I've watched something where John Oliver was personally attacking me, not by name, but practice. I'm pretty guilty of a lot of things that he was criticizing. The police reporting probably is the most one-sided reporting there is.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the nature of it, but the idea that journalism at its foundation is looking at what does somebody say and what is somebody's response when they're accused. It should be baked into police reporting, but it's not. And it is, the police are the official source. If you even consider trying to get the other side, you may try, you'll rarely get it. You have, unless you're going to work really hard, you have the staffing to spend a lot of time on each individual police story, which we should, but we don't. And I would wager that a lot of places don't even try to get the response. But one thing that he brought up, and this is it really illustrates the problem so severely. Look, go back to the George Floyd case.
Yep.
Look at the press release that the Minneapolis police put out about what happened to George Floyd the next day. He suffered a medical condition that resulted in him dying. I mean, it's staggering, but there's nothing unusual about that type of statement from the police because they control the information most of the time.
They absolutely control it, and they, you know, it's bad. It really is. But there are people who are advocates, and clearly you can label people as advocates, but they often do know the other side, and they often are helpful to reporters who are trying to get to people who can tell the other side of an incident like George Floyd, or like what happens in an individual community. My daughter is a spokeswoman for the Stop Police Terror Project in Washington, D.C., which is not exactly the least confrontational name for an organization, but it's very responsible. And they have good relationships with many reporters. The national reporters in DC are more likely to talk to them, you know, than the Washington Post reporters, because as you know, police reporters often have been on that beat forever. And what they've got is long time connections with cops, and they start to identify with them, and that's understandable.
Oh, yeah, what you just said about reporters identify with cops, it goes back a long time. I think there's a certain empathy between the two groups, or at least there used to be.
Yeah.
And now it's become more of a I don't know. There's more hostility than there used to be, but still, even in some of the way that journalists respond to criticism of other journalists, it's kind of like the thin blue line of the police work, where you don't want to be too critical of other people, even when they're doing terrible journalism, because it's they're part of the fraternity. And let's not speak ill of each other. Well, one of the principles of the SPJ code that I have occasionally used as rationale for some of the things I've written is that journalists, responsible journalists, should call attention to irresponsible journalism, and that would maybe one of the ways that we can increase trust. I don't know, but we should stop being so defensive.
Well, that was once the role of the public editor at the New
Yeah.
York Times. And unfortunately, that role has been disbanded. There's no more public editor at the Times. But that was a great role. I think there were
Yeah.
six public editors, and they called out their own staff members for unethical or questionable judgment calls.
Yeah,
But
that's
the statement we issued on Fox News, I find got a lot of traction when I posted it, particularly on LinkedIn. It did well, and on Twitter, you know, so that was a good case.
yeah. I think it's very, very hard to defend what Fox did. I think maybe that will wake up a lot of people that, you know, you can't just have a knee-jerk reaction that journalists could do no wrong. Sometimes they do, and sometimes it's blatant, as it was there.
Well, this might be a good opportunity for the SPJ and this committee to kind of examine itself in public in its whether it will take stances. And this was a wonderful example of stepping up to call out something that really needed it. And I think people appreciate that. I saw some good reaction to it. But there was a tendency much more in the past to be keeping an eye out for opportunities to speak. When the committee issued statements, several statements a year, not under any quota or anything like that. But that has kind of gone away. And is that something that's intentional? Or is there movement to bring it back? Anybody who's listening might be curious about that.
I don't think it's intentional. And in fact, I thought our approach to what we did in response to the Dominion lawsuit was very well considered. Maybe a little too carefully considered in that it took us a while to get something out there. But the discussion was very illuminating and I think stimulating.
I can tell you some of the topics that we spoke out in the past. Well, one that came up multiple times was what we call pay to play and licensing fees for sources to hand over materials they have, whether documents or videos, and then magically an exclusive interview goes along with that. We, in particular, took aim at NBC when there was a man whose child was the subject of a custody battle, and the child ended up in Brazil, but he won the rights to bring the child back, and NBC provided a plane for him to fly back. I think it was Christmas Eve, and a reporter on the
Yes.
plane with him, interviewing him, and then all of the different verticals of NBC all get their chance. And NBC says, no, we didn't pay him for his interview, which was absurd. And so we took aim at that. We put out a pretty scathing statement at the time, and the president of NBC News was furious. He had agreed to be on a panel, which he did, but after that, he said he would never deal with us again, and he's gone, so who knows? But I think, any opportunity to really take aim at the, calling out unethical conduct. I mean, no rules, we're not police, but we have a voice.
Yeah, that is, we are used to dealing with transgressions by holding them in the spotlight for a while, and our sanctions are what we say, not what we impose on people. I think asking people to explain themselves is part of that process, but it's also worthwhile for the morale and the conscience of the profession for someone to say, when somebody does something wrong, this is not right, this is not the way journalists should operate, and we condemn this sort of thing.
Well, and I hear us, and I've seen just through NABJ and other organizations that sometimes it depends on the leadership at that time, because if you have people who are at the are comfortable in their space and where they're employed, you may see a little bit more freedom to speak out and to I know for NABJ locally, we did, like, if it was something involving print, our broadcast people would speak out about it. If it was something involving television, our print people would speak out about it. And it's really lots of times when you have people sitting in front of folks who could potentially be their boss, and at any time, some people feel compromised or they're afraid to speak out. And that is unfortunate because there are a lot of lapses, and some things are totally out of order, and they need to be called out, and who better to do it than ones who know that it's wrong.
Yeah. One of the things that's happened over the past couple of decades has been the decline in the number of really independent news operations. And that leads to more of a corporate mentality, I think, that is not as accepting of that kind of freedom to speak within the organization as it used to be.
You wait for people to retire and then get only retired people to speak up because they don't have anything to lose. It's a dilemma for many because they are not going to, no one wants to police their own or run the risk of losing their job. And for those who are fearless, and we've had some long time SPJ members in this market who have been fearless and will speak out, and it's a good thing because there is an accountability. And I'll never forget, he's back in the news again, former Dallas Cowboy Michael Irvin, and he was accused of something several decades ago, and he said, when you find out the truth, I want you to report as loudly as you are reporting this untruth.
Hmm.
And these are things, some people hear the first story, but they don't hear the backstory, the additional ones that may have exonerated or actually proven to be true, some of the accusations with folks. But somewhere, somebody has to speak out for and be fearless in speaking out for what is right in our profession.
Yes, and to set a good example too.
You know, Cheryl mentioned something that really is important, that was a particular demand of an editor that I had. If we ran a story that was incorrect on page 1, the correction always ran on 1. Otherwise, it ran on page 2. And you could say, well, page 2 is a place where everybody goes to look anyway, so maybe that's good. But it was an attempt to try to give something the same platform. And so that really is important. I'm going to use that as a bit of a thread to circle back to police reporting. And this might be a topic for a forum in the future, looking at police reporting and
Yes,
different threads
absolutely a good idea.
attached to it. But one of the things that is particularly troublesome about it, and the wide-ranging effects that it has, is that police reporting also tends to be very one-sided, and that the allegations are reported, but it's not guaranteed and not even likely that the outcome will be reported. I mean,
Right.
put aside the high-profile stuff, that's, you know, gets a lot of attention, but the initial press release about a crime, there's no police agency that's putting out a press release when the person is acquitted. It's not, they'll say it's not their duty, but it is our duty to try to pay attention to this. And we so often don't, which is leading to another problem that's very pervasive, and that is the permanence of information, particularly allegations. They live on in our website, and we're hearing over and over from people saying, can you take this down? Which, you know, creates a real dilemma. We never want to change the historical record. If it was accurate, that's our response. If it's accurate, you know, we can update it, but we don't want to take it down. But there's a problem with that, and that is that many things that are being expunged means there is no way to update it. If you call somebody, you want to do the right thing and say, I just want to find out, was this dropped? Their answer is, I cannot give you any information about it. It doesn't exist in our records. So how are we coming at police reporting in a way that will be responsible, not just in the moment, but will live on? I think we have to start considering that maybe we don't run these arrest stories if we know that we have no intention of following up on them. I mean, I think that really bears a lot more self-examination within our industry.
Remember how popular the police blotter features used to be? You don't see it that often anymore, but it's probably used to be one of the most widely read parts of the Denver Post. And, you know, we had somebody at police headquarters in Denver almost full time. I'm not even sure he knew how to type, because that was in the days when you phoned in a story and gave it to a rewrite person. But that also was when the Denver Post had a newsroom of around 400 or 500 people. And now it's down to less than 100. So maybe there are some good things about losing staff, but I would say by far the bad effects of smaller staffs far outweigh the good effects.
Well, there's also sins of omission too. When I was a reporter in Lafayette, Indiana, the home of Purdue, you know, on Saturdays, I would have to do the police beat, not my favorite thing. But you'd go to the West Lafayette Police Department and ask about, you know, you'd ask about different kinds of possibilities of crimes. And one of them was, you know, rapes, reports of rapes. Well, according to the West Lafayette Police, there were never any rapes in West Lafayette. And I find that extremely hard to believe. But we didn't pursue it. You know, I couldn't. It was just something I did on Saturday night, Our police reporter, I think, ended up having a relationship with the police chief, which probably wasn't a good idea. And we should have investigated, because college campuses, as we know from later reporting, the police didn't pay attention. Even if a woman was brave enough to report a rape, that was it. It was just not talked about, not followed up, not investigated. And for too long, journalism went along with that. We weren't looking for those kinds of stories or asking questions. How can this be? In a small town with like a huge campus, I don't know, 40,000 people, it's not too likely that there are no reports of any sexual assaults every single week.
Yeah, and that's an example of a kind of a story that would benefit more from a long range view, a bigger view than simply reporting
Absolutely. Yeah.
incident reports from the
Yeah.
police.
Yeah. And I wasn't there very long. I was brand new to
Oh,
reporting.
yeah.
But yes, an editor should have asked and said, what do you mean there's no reports of this type of crime? We have to look into that. And that didn't happen. And it could have. There was enough people on the staff to do it.
People on the staff, that's a big problem now. I'm stating the obvious, but touching on what Andy and some others of you have said, there are not enough reporters in many instances.
That's true. But on the other hand, there are lots of voices.
Yeah.
Twitter is not absolutely dependable, but there are people who speak out on Twitter about things that happen. There's a lot of, the community is speaking to reporters all the time. I'm sure Andy has to filter through a lot of that, but there are voices.
You bring up a good point. And as I'm sitting here and I'm saying, I know I don't have the resources, but that's a story that could be every state. Because we know when I give talks to young ladies going to college, I talk about the culture of college campuses and how it has changed and how, since I was in college last century, it's changed a lot. And we had those conversations, but that would be a story. If you talk about the culture on college campuses, that is the unspoken culture, the amount of rapes that occur and what has been done about them. So that would be a good documentary, a good piece to even pursue if, just as we're even talking about it. And all I can say is I think about the ideas and I think about like the Dallas Media Collaborative and places why it is so important to have collaborations these days, because we cannot do all the work. We can't do half the stories that are in our heads that we'd like to do.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. So
Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour here, and we haven't really had a lot of questions from guests, mainly because we haven't had a lot of guests. So,
Well, Jennifer
but
likes.
it's been a great discussion.
Yeah, that's what Jennifer says. Jennifer Ellis says that she doesn't have a question, but it's a great discussion. So that's always good to hear.
Apparently we have 2 guests because it says 11 participants and there's just 9 of us here, so.
Counting two others, I don't see them.
Fred, do you mind just
Oh, wait a minute. Somebody is trying to enter the discussion here. I don't see a list of the participants. I mean, the attendees. Wait a minute.
On
We
the
have
right.
2. Amanda Rhodes and Jennifer Ellis. Jennifer, you want to speak?
Amanda and Jennifer.
do you mind just talking for 30 seconds about the trust documentary that SPJ is contributing to?
Oh, yes. Don Colosino is the guy who is working on that, and he is working closely with a lot of SPJ people, and I think is planning to release it in the spring of 2024. So he's putting together a 90-minute documentary, and has shown excerpts of it. He showed part of it at the 2022 convention in DC. And as I've mentioned several times, had an overflow crowd. Unfortunately, that overflow crowd didn't show up for the sort of the reprise of that program on Monday, but we did have a good discussion, I thought. It is not clear to me exactly what the relationship is. It's a partnership, as Don describes it, but I am not, Rod Hicks probably knows. I'm sure he does.
Between SPJ, you mean? And
Yeah.
There's a press release on that and the
Ah.
SPJ News. I will put it in the
Good.
chat or,
Yeah.
yeah, we issued a press release on it. It's sort of to give the film some credibility by sort of vetting the journalistic elements of it.
Huh.
SPJ is going to play that role,
All right.
a good role, but I'll see if I can find it, put it in there.
Here
But
we
the
go.
foundation didn't give him any money.
No, I don't think there's any money involved. No,
No.
nope. I'll
Oh,
find
we
it.
had actually now have 3 guests. Jennifer, did you want to say something?
It's muted.
You're muted.
Hi, Jennifer.
Or
Mm.
Amanda.
Are you there?
You're muted again.
Hello.
Hello?
Sorry, did you not hear me already?
No, we hear you now.
Now we hear you.
Sorry, I said I didn't have any questions, but I really appreciate this discussion. I thought the scenarios that Andy brought to the table were really interesting, and
Well,
I
thank you.
agree with him in that, you know, the more transparent and the more times we can explain how we do our jobs, I think is helpful.
And Jennifer, you commented that social media is a good way to explain what we're
Yeah,
doing.
I've seen a lot of, especially my broadcast friends who really do a great job of like videos that kind of explain the behind the scenes of how they've come up with these stories and some of the ethical things that go into that. And I think that is a great way to help, especially showing the younger generation who maybe doesn't have that background.
Any other comments from our audience of 2 more people? Well, anyone on the committee or the panel of experts care to add anything?
Thank
I
you
mean,
for together.
I
Yes.
just feel that we should be transparent and explain what we're doing. I think that AFP news agency that I work for, we call it a blog. I mean, it's online. It's called AFP Correspondent, and it explains how we're covering things like, you know, Ukraine or whatever. I think one example that was very interesting was there was this terrible massacre in Bucha, north of Kyiv, during the Russian occupation. And we had a team went in and found this street. You probably saw the story. There was 20 bodies on it. We already knew it was going to be denied. Okay. So what we did was we documented it very great detail. We wrote a blog about it, explaining how we covered it. Then the Russians denied it, said it was all fake. Other stuff on social media said it was fake, but we had already lined up our digital verification team, and I'll put it in, you might be interested in it, which actually digitally verified the images and also got satellite imagery from the time of the Russian occupation that placed the bodies in the middle of the town on It's not too graphic. It's a bit graphic, but not too graphic. I mean, it's graphic, but not close up. If you see that,
No,
see that was
yeah.
digital.
Yes.
See, that was digital verification. And I think this is why it's so important to explain what you're doing, because there
Yeah.
was a lot going out, say, I mean, Vladimir Putin, Lavrov all said it was staged. And we didn't say who did the killing. That's, you know, we quoted witnesses, but on the left is the satellite imagery that we got, which placed the bodies during the Russian occupation where they were when we entered the town. And we're not saying trust us, we're saying this is the evidence. You know, it's up to you to make your
Yeah.
decision. So,
Yeah.
so I think this kind of thing is important. But Chris, I mean, you said there was no correlation between credibility and transparency, didn't you? I didn't quite.
There's some relationship, but you know, you can be the best person on the planet and explain yourself fully and people not trust you. And of course, vice versa, as we have seen these last couple of weeks with what's been going on. But, you know, just the research just shows that transparency doesn't necessarily mean more credibility.
You're always going to have someone who says the satellite image was faked, you know. I
Well,
mean,
there are people
point-
who straight up lie about it, who simply don't know or buy into what they already believe and can't have their minds changed. But, you know, we are the most transparent communicators who exist. And so we're the ones who are more likely to show, look what we did wrong this time. And no other communicators do that. And frankly, not much of society is as transparent as we are. And I think society doesn't get that.
Yeah, it's kind of an alien concept to a
Yeah,
lot of.
you see so many stories this week about what's happening in, you know, with the firings of Fox and CNN, dozens of stories about it. And it matters because there are so many people who watch those shows, but you haven't seen those kind of stories in any other industry. We cover what we know because we know media, but
Well, you
we don't
see-
see it in other things.
You see them when businesses, there are a lot of business scandals that when there's legal, you know, there's a dispute, you know what the scandals are about. Look at when Silicon Valley Bank failed. We got a lot of insight into the incompetence of the people who ran the bank. When cryptocurrency failed and Sam Bankman-Fried turned out to be, you know, not exactly the most honest guy, we learned a lot about what went wrong there. So I think that we do learn about other people and other milieus when they do things that are wrong. Certainly in the political sphere, we cover our elected officials pretty thoroughly. And we know, you know, if Joe Biden sneezes, people will be there to cover that, and they should be. I'm not saying that. I mean, but I don't think that, I understand what you're saying, but our job is to be transparent. Journalism is about transparency. It's the essence of what we do. And I don't know how you can, and to explain what you do, yeah, it may affect credibility. I can understand what the sociology is and the fact that the psychology is, well, why do you have to explain yourself so much? But I don't see a way around it.
Our job is to be transparent, of course, and we do
Yeah.
the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not necessarily
Exactly.
because it's going to make us perceived as more credible.
Chris, if you, and I like what you had to say, Celia, I'm just wondering if we talk about who, because there are media watchdogs, if you will. And we look at, if you just want to look at the firings of this past week, we knew a lot of what we were hearing and seeing was wrong, but were we policing it? Were we doing the fact check stuff of ourselves, of our industry, or were we just letting it go? And would it go on if it were not for the lawsuit? Would it still be going on into the next election? And we knew that some things were going on at CNN, that maybe there were things that were said that people needed to be held accountable. And were we silent? I don't know what color the line is for journalists, you know, we do, is ours a blue line also? But we let people get away with things, you know, we let people ask questions that are clearly, we're bringing our biases into the way we ask questions and the way we are dealing with the sources that we're having a conversation with. And it's just, I didn't get in the business to become the story. And we have too many people who are in the business who are becoming the story now.
Yeah.
I'd like to just pick up Eric's example as a fantastic example of transparency. It's what we are struggling with is trust, going back to the idea of trust. And we too often say, no, but we're reporting this, trust us. Trust us is a meaningful phrase. It's trust but verify. And we should not be doing that ourselves, but expecting it of ourselves. So going back to the idea of what Eric's agency did, but in general, why not show your work? If you want to go back to, this was a particular interest of Steve Buttrey, and he brought it up when we did a code, SPJ code review, and it didn't make it in there, but I'm going to plant the seed that we consider it for the next round. Linking was a very high priority for him, and we ignored that. I don't think we should be ignoring that. Show your work is incredibly important. There's a big
I don't
difference.
think, I got to interrupt. No, we did not. We did not ignore it. We wrote, provide access to source material when it is relevant and appropriate. That's a link. That's other information.
Okay, so that does get at the idea. I think he may have wanted it to be more specific in using the word, but.
And I'm saying it's really hard to do in print, and we're trying to make a ethics code that is not just a print thing or an internet thing. Ken, I appreciate what he was saying, but I have to disagree. We've
Okay.
had this disagreement for 9 years now.
We have. Well, so let's think about online. I'll go to some work that I used to do in my last newsroom as an opinion page editor at an online only site. And everything that we posted, opinions from the community, had between 2 and 40 links to them. Anytime there was some type of fact and it wasn't obvious to the public and it wasn't obvious to me, I asked for a copy of what they were looking for. I wanted to verify it myself so that I could be comfortable sharing it, but I also wanted to present it to anybody else who also wanted to be investigating, where did you get this? And I know that people clicked through and read it. This should be a way of life, really thinking, how can I not just tell you what I did, but show you what I did in all circumstances.
Well, once again, this has been a lively discussion. I've enjoyed it. And I hope those guests we had enjoyed it too. Anyone else have any parting words or perhaps a prayer or a benediction?
Sunday morning here.
Well, thank you all for participating. I really appreciate it, and I appreciated the conversation. So with that,
Congratulations on an excellent ethics week.
thank you, Madam President.
Mhm.
Okay, well, have a good evening or morning, depending on where you are.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So long.